Hello, today I'm going to dive into some basic rules of navigation with the hopes of bringing knowledge to boaters, reduce accidents on the water, and increase everyone's overall boating experience. Now, I see so many boating accidents every week that can easily be avoided with a little bit of knowledge of knowing what to do in certain situations. Think of it like when you first started driving a car. You didn't just get behind the wheel and try to figure it out. You learn the rules and practice ensuring that you are a safe driver. The same principles apply when navigating and boating on the water. Now, before we dive into the content, I really want to give you the number one most important tip that I can give anybody, and that is do not consume alcohol if you're going to be controlling and operating a vessel on the water. Now, this is such a simple rule that everybody knows, but it's so tragic because alcohol-related accidents can be catastrophic, and they occur on a weekly basis everywhere. Now, this is going to bring me to my next topic, which is responsibility. When you're operating a boat on the water, it's going to be your responsibility to make sure that you adhere to all of the regulations. So having an accident on the water and simply stating that you didn't know that those were the rules is not going to get you out of the accountability that you had for that accident. Meaning, if you're involved in an accident on the water and you're negligent, you're going to be held responsible. So think of this like your car. If you're driving your car and you get into a car accident, the person at fault is going to be held responsible, and the same process applies when boating. Okay, so now that we got the alcohol out of the way and we got the fact that you are responsible for all of your actions and you're responsible for following all of the regulations on the water, let's dive into a couple different terms and definitions that you're going to need to know about boating. It's important for you to know the terminology for the left and the right and the front and the back of the boat. So on a boat, when the sides of the boat are really not, they're not called the left side or the right side, because if you're facing forward, the left side will be on one side, but if you're facing backwards, the left side is going to be on the opposite side. So this could create confusion in the communication to the people on the boat and to other people on other boats. So on boats, the right side of the boat is called the starboard side and the left side of the boat is called the port side. A very simple way to remember this is by a simple mnemonic phrase, and there are more right-handed people on Earth than there are left-handed people on Earth, and the word starboard has more letters than the word port, so the right side of the boat is the starboard side. And then conversely, since there are less left-handed people, the word port has less letters than starboard, so the port side of the boat is the left side of the boat. Now, the same principles are going to apply to the front and the back of the boat. The front of the boat is called the bow, and the rear of the boat is called the stern. So to easily remember this, picture a boat in your head, and you can see that the front of the boat is going to be smaller or narrower than the rear of the boat. And the word bow has less letters than the word stern, so the bow is the front of the boat. And the rear of the boat is wider or larger than the front of the boat, so the word stern is longer or larger than the word bow, so stern is the rear of the boat. Knowing these terms and using them correctly is going to eliminate any confusion when communicating a message to the recipient of that message. Now, this is also how boats and boaters communicate on the VHF radio. So it's going to be important that you fully understand these, so that when you're talking to another vessel on the radio or they're talking to you, that you fully understand the message that they're conveying to you. The next important thing that I would tell you is to always have a lookout on your boat. Now, a lookout is a person that is watching and listening and can see at a 360-degree view all around the boat for potential hazards or someone that's going to be in need of help. And it's important to note that on small boats, such as center consoles, you as yourself as the operator could be the lookout. Really, the important thing is that everybody on the boat is alert, paying attention, and is paying attention to all of the surroundings. You know, we had a very tragic accident here in Miami, and it involved a boat that hit a channel marker. And in this incident, one person died and 3 were critically injured in this accident. And it's a shame that this happened because there were 10 people on the boat that all could have been looking for potential hazards to alert and warn to say, hey, we're approaching this channel marker. 10 people failed to be the lookout, boat hit the channel marker and cost somebody their life. So having a lookout on the boat, while it may seem like it's a small little detail, somebody to be looking around and paying attention, that small little detail could save somebody's life. Now remember what we spoke about when we talked about responsibility. If you're boating and you kill somebody on the water due to negligence, you are going to be faced with manslaughter charges. So save yourself all of those headaches when you're out boating. Make sure that you have a lookout, or you tell everybody on the boat to be looking out, and everybody's looking out for potential hazards. Remember that when it comes to safety, you can never overdo safety, especially on a boat. Now, the next term that I want you to really understand is called safe speed. Now, safe speed by the law and the rules of navigation is not defined by a number like for miles per hour, but the definition is a speed at which you could safely navigate your boat and stop your boat to avoid a collision with another boat or a fixed object. So this is completely up to the operator on the vessel, but it is your responsibility to make sure that you are always operating that vessel at a safe speed. Meaning that on a clear day, your visibility is going to be very good, or if you are navigating in open ocean, then you can navigate at a faster safe speed than if you were caught in fog in the ocean or in a thunderstorm with heavy rain that severely restricts your visibility, or if you're navigating in an area with heavy boat traffic, your safe speed should be a much slower one. This is a very important one to make sure that you understand and always implement when you're boating. Remember we talked about responsibility. If you were to hit someone or hit something, a judge in a criminal court could say that you were not following the rules because you weren't operating at a safe speed. Because a safe speed is defined as a speed in which you could safely navigate your vessel and stop before you have a collision with another boat, a person, a fixed object. So the idea is that you could safely stop. So save all of those headaches. Every time you go on the boat from now on, remember safe speed and always navigate at a safe speed based on the conditions and the surroundings that you're in. Now, unfortunately, you're going to be following all of these new rules that you're learning and you're going to implement and put them into action. But unfortunately, you're still going to have boaters out there that are not going to follow these rules. So having said that, it's very important for you to understand when you're in a situation that could be a potential risk for collision. So your lookout can easily see the potential hazard with enough time to react and for you to change the heading on your vessel. You're going to also be able to determine if a vessel is a potential hazard by observing your compass and determine if the approaching vessel has a constant bearing to your vessel. Then if you have a radar, you can also use the radar on the boat if it's operational to determine if there's a risk of collision. Now, it's important to note that if you have a radar on your boat, the rules state that you must use your radar to determine risk of collision. Now, if you have a radar and you don't feel that comfortable, or maybe you just got one and you really don't fully understand how to use it, I have a separate video where I deep dive into how to use and interpret the radar image on your screen. This video is located on my channel page within the Garmin Marine playlist, along with some other very helpful Garmin electronics videos. Okay, so let's say that you have determined that you're in a situation where a risk of collision is imminent. It's going to be your responsibility to make sure that you avoid that risk of collision. Now, when taking action to avoid that risk of collision, the rules state that you have to make a large adjustment. So for example, if you're going to make a course adjustment to ensure that you avoid a risk of collision, you want to make a large course adjustment, and you also want to check your surroundings and make sure that the new course adjustment that you make doesn't put you at a potential risk of collision either with another vessel or another fixed object. Now, the reason why you want to make a large course adjustment, and the rules say to make a large course adjustment, is because if you were to make a small course adjustment, it can now create confusion to that other vessel as to your intent and which way you're trying to go. So by making a large course adjustment, there's no confusion to any other vessel as to your intent of what you're trying to do. Another important thing to note, to avoid a collision, another simple thing that you could do is just simply slow down your vessel. Let the other vessel pass, and then you can resume and continue navigating in the direction that you were going. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is navigating in channels. Now, this is going to sound like it's common sense. It's a super easy one, but I want to talk about it because every time that I'm on the water, I see boats that are not following this rule and that they're putting themselves and other boaters at risk when navigating in the channels. So when you're navigating within a channel, you're supposed to navigate as close as possible to the markers on your starboard side of the boat. This is going to be no different than when you're driving in a car in a lane of traffic. You're driving in the right-hand lane, and then the left-hand lane is for oncoming traffic. Now, this seems like common sense. Again, like I said, very easy one. But every time I'm on the water, I see boaters that are navigating on the wrong side of the channel into oncoming boat traffic, navigating right down the middle, or they can't control the boat and they're zigzagging across the channel. Now, if you're in the channel by yourself, awesome. There's not going to be any hazard because it's just you in the channel zigzagging around or driving on the wrong side. But there's heavy boat traffic and you are now driving into oncoming boat traffic. The boaters that are driving towards you do not know your intent and which way you're going to try to maneuver and turn, or if you're zigzagging or you're driving right down the middle, you're creating a potential hazard and a risk of collision to other boaters. Now, in most of the channels, especially the ones around here where I'm at, there's not enough water outside of the channel for boats to safely navigate. So if you're driving in the middle or you're driving on the wrong side of the channel, you're now forcing another boat that's coming towards you to either have to run aground, hit the water outside of the channel, or hit your vessel by maintaining into the channel. So very dangerous situation. Always navigate on the starboard side as close as you could safely navigate to the markers on your starboard side. Again, this is no different than if you're driving a car, you're driving in the right-hand lane and oncoming traffic is driving in the left-hand lane. Now, another thing that a lot of people do is that they fish inside of the channels. And you could fish inside of the channels, but I would tell you to use common sense when you're fishing inside of the channels or at the entrance of the channel where the boats are coming in and boats are anchoring there. This creates if you're by yourself, no problem. But if there's a heavy traffic flow of boats and you're anchored in the middle of that channel, you are a high risk for collision. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get other boaters hurt. The way that I could best describe this, think about driving your car. You would not be driving your car on a busy highway and stop your car in the middle of all the lanes of traffic because you're going to get hit. So if you're going to fish in a channel, use common sense. If there's heavy boat traffic, don't anchor at the mouth of the channel. Don't anchor with your vessel within the channel and create a potential risk of collision. The next item I want to touch on is sailing vessels. So sailboats are really hard to steer when they're under sail, and when they're operating under motor, they're very, very slow and very hard to turn. So if you see sailboats, practice good boating etiquette. Don't cut them off. Don't navigate in a situation where they have to try to avoid hitting your boat from a risk of collision, because they can't really steer and turn that boat as easily as you can. So good boating etiquette. Steer clear of the sailboats. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is called overtaking. Overtaking, simply what it means is that when you are passing another vessel to get in front of them. So think about a car driving on the highway. You're going to pass that car and get in front of the car. Now, the reason why this is so dangerous is because if both of the vessels are not on the same page, this could be an extremely seriously dangerous situation that can lead to a risk of collision with the boat. Channel markers, the bank of the channel, bridges can be very dangerous. Now, the rules of navigation state that there are specific sounds of your horn that you need to sound to the vessel which you want to overtake. Then that vessel has to sound, whether you want to pass them on the starboard or the port side, then that vessel has to sound back to you a specific sound acknowledging that it's okay for you to pass them on the starboard or the port side, and then it's okay for you to proceed. The issue with this is that 99.9% of all the boaters that are out there don't know these sounds. So what I would tell you to do, because nobody's going to know this, is that if you're in a situation where you're going to pass, you need to pass another vessel, I would make sure that you establish communication with that vessel, either by the VHF radio, by your horn, hand signaling, hey, I'm going to go by you, and they're going to give you a thumbs up, okay? Something like that, because if you try to pass another vessel or overtake this vessel, and this vessel doesn't know that you're trying to pass them, they don't have a lookout that's looking out their stern to see that you're coming, the vessel could turn into your vessel, causing an accident. You also could get too close to that vessel, and you're going to hit the wake of that vessel. Depending how you hit the wake of that vessel, it's going to abruptly change the bow of your vessel, and you're going to run into that vessel, or it's going to abruptly push your bow away from the vessel. The issue with this is that most of the time when people are passing or overtaking, they're overtaking in a channel, a narrow fairway, and it's going to push your bow into the bank of the channel, the rocks of the jetty, the bridge, channel markers. It could be an extremely dangerous situation. So make sure you establish communication with the vessel that you want to overtake. Hey, I want to pass this side, thumbs up, something so that both of you are on the same page when you try to overtake a vessel. The next situation that I want you to be very familiar with is called a head-on situation. Now, a head-on situation is when two vessels are coming together head-on and there's a risk of collision head-on between the two vessels. If you're ever involved in this situation, what you're supposed to do is to turn your vessel to starboard and pass the other vessel port to port. Now, don't let this confuse you, the turning to starboard. I know we're just practicing to learn all of those. This is no different than when you're driving your car. Think about it. If you're driving your car and there's another car coming head on to your car, you're going to swerve to the right to try to avoid the collision with that car. The same thing is what you want to do on the boat. You want to turn your boat to starboard, which is turning it to the right, and avoid the head-on collision, and you're going to pass port to port, or like we learned at the beginning, left side to left side, which is incorrect to call it left side, but for the purposes of you visualizing this, you're going to pass port to port and avoid the head-on collision. The next one that I want to talk about is called crossing situations. And this one is going to be very important because this one's going to be more common than probably head-on situations. But crossing situations are when two vessels are coming together and they're going to cross each other. Okay? And I see this happening all the time when boats are coming out of the channel of the marina and boats are navigating or boats are coming in. This is happening on a daily occurrence as boats are coming in to the channel at the marina and they're both coming to a point. Now, in this situation, I want you to think about this. If you're navigating and you have the other vessel to your starboard side, then they have the right of way. And if you're navigating and you have the other vessel to your port side, you have the right of way. So let's review this in this diagram to really give you a visual of what I'm saying, because it could be confusing. So in this example, you have vessel A and you have vessel B. Vessel A has vessel B to their starboard side, so vessel B has the right of way. So in this scenario, vessel A is going to alter their course to starboard and is going to pass vessel B on their stern to avoid a collision. Now, this sounds great. The only issue with this is, again, 99.9% of all boaters out there have no idea of the right of way and who's the giveaway vessel, the stand-on vessel, who has the right of way. So it's real easy for you to let the other boat, you get out of the way and let the other boat go by. But what if you're the vessel that has a right of way? Is that other boat gonna know that you have the right of way and it's gonna get out of your way? What I would tell you when you're in these crossing situations, approach these situations in a defensive manner, even if you have the right of way. Because even if you have the right of way, this doesn't mean that you could just keep on steaming by and force the other boat to get out of the way or hit your boat and you're in the right. Because remember that it's your responsibility to do everything that you need to do to avoid a collision. So in these situations, I would tell you to be very defensive, be paying attention to the other boat. 99.9% of the time, every time I'm doing this, and I'm in a crossing situation, the other boat just keeps barreling through like they're the only boat on the water, I slow down, I alter my course to let the other boat pass, and then I continue in the direction that I was supposed to be navigating after the risk of collision has passed and it's safe to proceed. Now, having said that, it is important for you to know who is supposed to have the right of way, because law enforcement, commercial fishing boats, and licensed captains, they're gonna know who has the right of way, and they're gonna expect you to give way and let them proceed if they have the right of way. Again, I want you to think about this in any situation where boats are coming together and there's a risk of a potential collision is always a dangerous situation. If you're ever in doubt, just slow down, change your course, let the other vessel pass, and then you can continue to proceed safely. Boating accidents that are either head-on or crossing situations usually are very catastrophic accidents. So be defensive, let the other boat go by, avoid that risk of collision. Now, the next situation that you could find yourself in, and this is anywhere, these examples that constitute the definition for this situation, is anywhere in the world. They happen on a daily occurrence everywhere. This situation is called being in restricted visibility. Now, being in restricted visibility is such an important rule and such an important and dangerous situation that the International Rules of Navigation designed an entire rule just based on this situation. Now, the important thing when you think about restricted visibility, this is any situation in which your visibility is restricted. So this can be in a situation like if you're caught in a storm in the ocean, if you're navigating and there's heavy fog, you could be somewhere in the north where there's snow that's falling and is restricting your visibility. And even when you're navigating at night, it's considered being in restricted visibility. Now, there's so many different rules that apply when in restricted visibility. I don't want to confuse you with all of those, but the most important thing when you're in restricted visibility is that you must slow down your vessel to idle speed. And the reason why you're supposed to slow down your vessel to idle speed is because you can't see, your visibility is restricted, and at idle speed it's going to give you time to react. And if everybody's navigating at an idle speed, God forbid that even if there was a collision, the damage and the risk is going to be minimal to none, because everybody is operating at an idle speed. Now, being in a restricted visibility situation is so dangerous because, like we said, you cannot see any of the potential hazards that are around you. And if you have a radar on your boat, the radar could get a lot of interference by the storm or the conditions that you're in, and it's going to block your radar screen. That's going to prevent you from being able to identify if there's any other vessels around you. So when you're navigating in restricted visibility, remember to navigate at idle speed. And this is where you're going to put even more intensity on your lookouts, turn your music off, turn your radio down, because in restricted visibility, you're going to need to be able to hear even more than in clear visibility, because sometimes you could hear the potential hazard before you could see it. So it's important that you have clear communication between you, the people on your boat, your lookout, and that you can effectively listen for potential hazards. The other thing that I want to touch on about restricted visibility is navigating at night. You cannot imagine the amount of boats that I encounter on a weekly basis. Every time I'm out on the water and I'm navigating at night, I have my radar on, my eyes are peeled, radar screen, horizon, I'm looking, because every time I go out on the boat, I encounter boats that are navigating at night or anchored at night with no lights on. I cannot stress how important it is to ensure that your boat has working side lights. Now, the side lights are going to be the red and green lights on the side of your vessel, and these lights indicate to other vessels the direction in which you're traveling in. The other light that needs to be perfectly working is your all-round white light that's located on the roof of your vessel. And this is a light that shines at a 360-degree view around your boat. Now, I have a safety process where I do a pre-trip and a post-trip inspection of all the safety items on the boat before I go on the boat, and once I come back from going out on the boat, to ensure that if there's a deficiency on any of these safety items are repaired before the next time that boat goes out in the water. Now, I made a separate video on this, and it's located in our Boating 101 playlist if you want to go ahead and take a look at it and get some ideas on how you could implement a safety checklist for your vessel. Now, remember that if you're navigating at night, you have no lights on your vessel. Other vessels cannot identify where your vessel is, the direction that you're traveling in, and this creates a catastrophic event if there's a risk of collision for you and the other parties that are involved. So please make sure you check your navigation lights on your boat, even if you go out on the boat and you're not planning on going out or coming in during non-daylight hours, because you never know what can happen. Your motor could break down, anything can happen that could cause you to come back to port during non-daylight hours, and if your lights are inoperable, you are now driving your vessel with no lights on. Very important, make sure your navigation lights are working. The other thing I would tell you is this has more to do with safety than kind of like the rules of navigating, but if you're going out on a boat, make sure that you have a working VHF radio. God forbid you ever need to use it, but if you're ever caught in an emergency situation, you want to be able to call for help, and the VHF radio is the way to do it. Now, I have a separate video on this. If you have a VHF, or you're not sure how to use it, or you want to get a little bit more familiarity to what channels to use, and even how to place emergency calls so that you're ready in the event that you ever needed to use it, I have a video for that. Now, this video really covers the basic rules of navigation, but I would highly recommend that you review the videos that I have inside of the Boating 101 playlist and really familiarize yourself with the safety videos inside this playlist, where I really cover specific safety items in depth. Then I would also recommend that you review the items in the Garmin Marine Electronics playlist for in-depth tutorials for your marine electronics. Now, everyone deserves to have a fun and enjoyable experience when on the water. So always remember that when you're on the boat, safety is the number one, the top priority. Now, I have another video that I think is going to be excellent for you to check out next, and it's going to teach you how to read and identify potential hazards on your chart plotter, and you'll be able to read your GPS screen like a pro.